So I've read through just over half of Plato's dialogues, and one of the things that you'll come across in it is a lot of pseudoscience. Although, in terms of that, one of the more interesting things to actually know about it is that a lot of it actually kind of makes sense and is quite logical. Not all of it, but a good decent amount of it. Now, it still is obviously pseudoscience, and from our perspective, it's ridiculous. Although that's only given the fact that nowadays the vast majority of people, if not virtually all people, have at least a very basic rudimentary understanding in modern sciences that people in ancient Greece obviously wouldn't have had. For example, one of the things that Socrates brings up in his dialogues is, and this is actually one written by Xenophon, is the idea of intelligent design, basically stating that humans are so perfect in terms of where our face is proportioned, our nose, our mouth. Animals, you can see the way that they're generally set up. They all seem to go well according to their different kind of environments. Everything's just set up in a way that's generally logical, that generally makes sense. And that surely this couldn't have come about by chance. I mean, just consider all of different kinds of animals, different kinds of environments, and the position of everything. So clearly there must be some kind of thought behind it, some kind of design to set things up in the way that they are, so logically. And this does make sense and it is logical, although of course we know now from evolution that while there is a certain logic to it, it isn't designed. It's simply something that's came out over countless generations, millions of generations, billions of generations going back literally hundreds of millions of years, of selecting the best from the bunch to reproduce. So the face isn't something that was just designed. The ears weren't placed in one part, the nose, the mouth. Animals weren't designed to be certain shapes, to have certain diets that correspond to where they live. They evolved into those habitats. Although again, if you don't have any understanding of evolution of modern science, the intelligent design argument, as Socrates puts out specifically, is very convincing. Again, there's many others, but just to cite another one, this is in one of Plato's dialogues. He basically talks about how, just like a theory, a hypothesis, how no one can learn anything. How instead of learning things, rather, we are born with this knowledge, but we simply have to remember it. We have to bring it to our mind. It's as if we had the knowledge at some point, say before we were born, but we forgot about it. And by learning something, we're actually just remembering what we once forgot. He uses maths, for example, how, among other things, there is some kind of basic natural intuition for maths. Among animals, for example, they have an understanding of how to walk, eventually how to fly, how to feed. In that all beings, whether it be humans, animals, birds, fish, whatever kind of beings they are, have kind of basic inbuilt understandings of things. So he's saying that there was this knowledge, it's just been forgotten, and then naturally it comes about, things are remembered, because we can learn things without them being explicitly taught. Again, nowadays when we have understanding of basic science, of evolution, we know that these are simply instincts. The evolution has set things up in a certain way where we have certain instincts. There's not only a kind of physical phenotype, as in evolution set us out a certain way physically. Again, stuff has been portioned in such a way. Certain body parts are placed where they are. We have certain diets that correspond to the environment. Also, our psychology, our ability to do math, our understanding of language. A lot of things that just come intuitively to us, which either aren't taught at all, or at least aren't explicitly taught, but are kind of picked up through a habit by mimicking people around us. That this, like again, contrary to the intelligent design argument, is simply evolution. And again, the point of this video really is that you really have to consider that from our perspective, where anyone can know this, anyone can look at Socrates' opinions and a lot of the other pseudoscience, both in Plato's writings, as well as in other Greek works and just works in the past in general. Even an idiot can look at these are wrong, and it can seem obviously ridiculous, as they are. But this is only with the understanding of past generations, of people like Charles Darwin, people like Socrates himself, kind of setting down these fundamental guidestones, improving our knowledge and understanding. I think it's important to look back at these things like intelligent design, or even the idea that, again, people don't really learn things, they just remember it. Can I consider it from their perspective? Think, well, you may consider yourself intelligent above these people in a certain way. Obviously, we would see Socrates as wiser, as far more intelligent, far more eloquent than the average person. But some people might say that in this one way, in the understanding of evolution, most people, or ideally the reader, looking back at themselves, would say that they're superior to Socrates. But what they really have to question is, if they were born before Charles Darwin, what would their ideas be? What would their conceptions be? I think a lot of people who are pretty die-hard atheists, who completely reject the idea of God, who have never believed in him, who have read Charles Darwin, who have read a lot of literature on it, a lot of books, and really have a good understanding of it logically. If they were born 200, 300, possibly even 150 years ago, would have been Christians because they would have read works like Socrates, and funnily enough, in the exact same way that they became atheists, or their atheism was kind of hardened, strengthened, their belief in Christianity or a certain God, whatever religion it would have been, or possibly even if they were atheists for a certain point and then they read this, would have strengthened their point in becoming kind of God-believing, God-fearing people, because this is simply a logical argument. And if you don't understand evolution, it's almost impossible to refute. Of course, I couldn't say myself, but prior to reading this, I always considered myself kind of arrogantly as someone who would have always been an atheist, who would have never believed in God because it was such a ridiculous idea. But now I think, again, if I was born 200 years ago and I read these kinds of arguments, both from Socrates and no doubt from other people, and I didn't really have a refutation from it, and again, even just basically Charles Darwin, or a lot of other people who I'm even taking for granted even more than that, who I can't even think of right now. If I didn't have these works to refute those ideas, I think there's a very good chance that I would simply believe them, with no good evidence to the contrary, or no logic to the contrary. But yeah,